What's up, guys? T-Rex for House Rules Gaming here. And first and foremost, I want to go ahead and apologize for the long break in between videos. I recently just transitioned into a new full-time job, and the change in schedule and routine has been nothing short of exhausting. So as I've been trying to adjust to the new position, I hadn't been able to take the time that I really wanted to sit down and come up with new content and videos for you guys. As I work through the new wrinkles that I have in my daily schedule, I'm trying to find some more time to carve out to dedicate to coming up with new video ideas and actually sitting down and recording this stuff. So I do appreciate those of you who stuck with me through this as I try to put out videos on a more regular basis. And without further ado, let's get into it. So July 15th is getting closer and closer by the day. And as we inch closer to the release of this game, we've started to get a much clearer view of what will be included in it and what won't be at launch. It's gotten me to thinking as to what we could potentially see as DLC content in the near future. As something that's ever present in the modern video game landscape is developers trying to get further into our pockets after they've already gotten our initial investment into the games that we all enjoy. And quite frankly, EA is no stranger to that, with their uber aggressive, borderline predatory strategy of charging microtransactions to be close to competitive in their card collecting modes that we know as Ultimate Team. But I'm not their target audience for something like that, as I will never pay real money for digital assets just to be competitive in a game that I play for fun. This game is supposed to be my stress relief, not give me more of it. But I do, however, partake in additional content in the form of cosmetic packs for uniforms and other things that can add to the immersive experience. But not every company does DLC right. And the last time that I paid for DLC from EA was in NCAA 14. And although they weren't pricey, but I don't think they were executed the best either. Sometimes game companies like to do this annoying thing where they cut corners in development, then try to sell you content that feels like it should have been part of the base game in the first place. Now, by no means am I saying that this is what the team that worked on this game has done, but they have kind of done that in the past. Take a look at this example here from a site that I used to frequent back in the day to get all my named roster files, called pastapadre.com. Now, for those of you who aren't watching the video but are only listening, I'm gonna go ahead and read it out to you. This blog post was posted September 24th of 2013, saying, I quote, "For the third consecutive week, EA Sports has released a $1 DLC uniform pack for NCAA Football 14. On the surface, that kind of post-release support sounds great until the actual content being provided is examined to find the majority of the items were just gloves, while teams with full uniforms and helmets are still missing from the game continue to get bypassed. The fourth uniform pack involves Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, Notre Dame, UCLA, and USC. With the exception of all but one school, this is a pack for gloves. Michigan State gets a new uniform, helmet, and gloves. The other 5 only receive new gloves." Now, this article was written in reference to the uniform DLC packs that they dropped for the game back then, and this was on pack 4. So we got 4 straight weeks of nothing but gloves, with some helmet and jerseys sprinkled in. Granted, they were only $1, but still, for 4 separate uniform packs to be mostly glove releases, they could have put all of those together for $1 versus doing it like that. And the comment section on this blog post didn't let up either, as most of them also felt slighted by this approach to DLC. Now, I'm not going to read all of these. I will post most of them on the screen, but I will highlight the one that I felt like I agreed with the most. And that was a comment by the user Tommy. And I quote, "If they make new face masks and helmets available for $1, I'd pay for it. Not for gloves though. They need to get the half sleeves to work right first. Ohio State would not be wearing half sleeves at home in the snow in real life." That last part is kind of whatever, because I wore a single sleeve all season long, even in the winter time, but I digress. But it's the first part of the comment I really want to focus on, because seeing as this game came out in 2013, but it was representative of the 13-14 season, we just so happen to get a new helmet model the year after in the Rydell Speed Flex, which I gladly would have paid $5 to $10 for a DLC that included a new helmet model and a whole bunch of new face masks that went with it. Because the essence of what Tommy was trying to say was, give us something that makes a huge visual difference in the game versus gloves that we will never see on a player except in specific cinematic shots and replays and celebrations. But to make it worse, check this one out. In Uniform Pack 6, or I guess it would be 5 and 6 because they released at the same time. So you had Pack 4 drop September 24th, and it took them all the way to November 5th to drop Pack 5 and 6. The Pasta Padre article reads like this: EA Sports today released the 5th and 6th uniform packs for NCAA Football 14 after a gap of 6 weeks with nothing. Each DLC pack costs $1, and unlike earlier ones, these contain all jerseys and helmets rather than mostly being limited to gloves. Fam, it took them to the first week in November to even get jerseys. That's week 11, my dude. The season is almost over at that point. Those should have been free. If EA decides to roll out DLC, not only for this year's game, but any of them in the future, they need a much better approach to avoid that fiasco again. Although, I wish that every bit of extra content that is made for this game could be free. But I also understand that it is a business and they are constantly looking for ways to fund the development of a game past its initial sale. So I came up with a list of 11 things in which I would consider either appropriate as DLC or not appropriate and should have been included in the base game or a free update. But really quick, I want to make sure you guys know about my subscriber giveaway. Once this channel hits 500 subscribers, I will give away 1 copy of the game. And if we can get to 1,000 before the game drops, I'll make it 2 copies. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't have to miss out. And now let's get back to the video. Okay, so number 1, and this is one of the most highly requested things that I've seen since we even found out that the game was coming back in the first place, and that would be the inclusion of FCS schools. While the team over at EA had already come out and said that wasn't something that they were considering for the first iteration of this game, but could be considered for either future versions or possible DLC. And I think that would be the perfect candidate for DLC, because I, for one, even in the older versions of the game that actually had the FCS schools included, I never really played with them. Like, it was always nice to know that they were there and that I had the option to if I ever decided, but I just don't have that same affinity for those schools that I do some of my FBS schools. Now, if they were to give us FCS schools as a DLC, I think this is the way that they should do it. Don't sell them as individual schools. Sell them as a conference. That way, you not only get the rights to use all of the individual schools in that conference, but you also get the rights to that conference's championship. That way, you could also implement a mode within Dynasty for those FCS conference packs to where they wouldn't have to replace any of the current FBS schools to be used, but they could be within its own contained little bubble, if that makes sense. That way they could recruit the same pool of players that's already been generated for the Dynasty, and they have the potential to move up out of their FCS division and into the FBS. Now, if we did get FCS schools as a DLC pack, I would like for them to allow us to replace the generic ones that we get within Dynasty, like the FCS Southeast, Southwest, things like that, with schools from the conference packs that we download. Oh, and if they take the time to get these FCS schools in there, the band audio for HBCUs better be on point. Enough said about that. So numbers 2 and 3, I'm going to kind of talk about them together because my point for these is the exact same. Number 2 would be retro uniforms, and number 3 would be concept uniforms. And if we were to get these in the game, I repeat, do not sell these per school, sell them per conference. Now, that would be just a value statement at that point, because I don't want to be nickel and dimed for each individual school's retro unis. Like, if you were to tell me that I could either pay $1 per school, or for only the schools that I want, or I could get the entire, let's just say, ACC pack for $5. Oh, give me the whole pack. Even though I might only want 3 schools out of it, I would still rather pay the extra 2 and get every school in that conference versus just buying the 3 that I want. And the same thing can be said for concept uniforms, which I've seen some extremely dope uniforms be made by community members over in the College Football Revamp Discord server, to the point where I think these schools need to be going over there and looking at some of these creators and actually implement a lot of these uniforms. And a lot of them aren't really like over the top, but it's just stuff that kind of makes sense for that university, like the black Texas uniform and these Alabama uniforms with like the houndstooth design within the numbers. It's just so sweet looking. Now, obviously, I know we're getting Team Builder back, but we still don't know the details on that. But my ultimate hope for that mode is that we could actually jump over there and create a new uniform for an existing school and import it directly into that school without having to create an entire duplicate over there just to use some new custom uniforms. All right, coming up at number 4, we have stadium sounds. And what I mean by that is specifically the licensed music that schools play during their games that EA did not get the rights to. I mean, hey, I get it. Music licenses are expensive, especially, thinking like Metallica and Enter Sandman. That's not going to be a cheap license. But something that I think would make both the music license holders as well as EA happy is if we had the ability to pay for individual licensed audio from each school. Now, this is something that I do think would be appropriate for us to pay per school on. Now, I don't have the complete list of every licensed song that didn't make it into the game, but the few that do come to mind are Virginia Tech, Enter Sandman, Wisconsin's Jump Around, and Mizzou's Swag Surfing. Now, obviously, with the end user paying for that individual song, they should have the ability to use that song anywhere they want in the game and not necessarily just at those specific schools. But I think a lot of people would pay just for the option and ability to do that. And at number 5, we have classic teams. Now, quite frankly, I think this is probably one of the more far-fetched ones, just simply because getting the rights to all of the older players, especially ones that may not be living anymore, could be extremely difficult. Also, not everybody made it to the league and didn't sign an agreement with the NFLPA, so they never were a part of the Madden game for EA to be able to use their rights in this video game anymore. And plus, it's a separate license agreement anyway between Madden and EA, so I'm assuming it will probably be a whole different agreement that they would need to sign. But I think it would be nice to have the option to do so. I personally probably would never buy one, but I know a lot of people that would. You know what? I actually take that back, because if I had the option to play with the 2015 Ohio State Buckeyes or the 2019 LSU Tigers, or even be able to recreate that 06 national championship with USC and Texas, I probably would go ahead and pull the trigger on that one. So being able to buy individual classic teams would definitely be a nice add-on. Would be difficult, but really nice if they could pull it off. And lastly, for what I would deem as appropriate DLC, would be additional generic assets for Team Builder. So this idea actually came from a member of the Trasher Discord server, and I swear I hope I don't butcher this, but a user by the name of Leland Ledoux 21 brought up the idea of additional generic mascots for Team Builder, and that sent my brain down a whole rabbit hole. Now, provided that we get a good amount of them to start with, I would be okay with multiple additional asset packs dropping, as Team Builder is probably one of, outside of Dynasty mode, one of my favorite things to do in these games. But if we could get something like, I'm just gonna like say it like this, like a lion or tiger pack, where you have a bunch of different styled 3D rendered lion and tiger mascots, or you get like a lizard pack where you get a bunch of different or reptile pack, I'm sorry, like a bunch of different reptiles like lizards, alligators, snakes, things like that. I mean, the possibilities could be endless, as well as if they allowed us to not only shade, like you change the color like template of the mascot itself, of its entire self, but be able to dress that mascot in our uniforms. That would just be so dope. Now I fully expect for them to drop the real like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour templates and Jordan in templates into Team Builder for us to build our jerseys off of that. But if that's not a part of it, if it were to be released as an add-on asset pack, I'm not going to be happy the fact that they made us pay for it, but I absolutely would pay for it, because nothing makes a Team Builder team look more out of place than generic jerseys and generic shoes. Because we should be able to designate whether it's a Nike, Adidas, Under Armour school, because then at that point it would say, okay, now your players on this team can only wear Nikes, can only wear Jordans, Under Armour, Adidas, things like that. And now let's get into what I think would be not appropriate as DLC, something that we would have to pay for. And number one would be new uniforms, especially if a school were to drop them mid-season. We purchased this game with the expectation that this is a current representation of college football that season. We should not be forced to pay for new uniforms that the team just decides out of nowhere that they want to wear. Now, realistically speaking, nowadays that doesn't happen as often, as merch sales are everything, and they want to give the fans and the students ample time to buy whatever new uniform that they decide to put out. But I like to use the example of the first year of the college football playoff. Right after all of the playoff teams were announced, Nike came out with playoff exclusive kits for all of those schools, because all the schools that made the playoff that year were Nike schools, and they had like this embossed diamond on each of the jerseys, and Ohio State even had like a difference in their striping on there too. That's not something that we should have to pay for. That needs to be a free update. Number two would be game modes, something that we haven't gotten confirmed, which I don't think it's in, because I also feel like they mentioned that it was not in this year's game. For example, would be mascot mode. If they were to decide that, hey, we're bringing mascot mode back, that also free update. That shouldn't be a DLC. I don't think they would do that though, because they have done over the years drop new things like Superstar KO in the Madden, and I think the Yard also dropped out of nowhere in Madden. I mean, obviously there was like rumblings and rumors beforehand, but as far as just to put the mode out there, they didn't make anybody pay for that. I don't think they would do that here. But you know, in the event they get that wise idea to do so, I don't think that shouldn't be paid for. That should be free. Number three, gear and accessories, in which I'm mostly referring to helmets and face masks here, because these companies are always doing something new, and you know, somebody ends up being the guinea pig for it. If we get new helmets dropped mid-season, that again also should be included in an update, or at the very least, you know, hold it off till next season. Don't go and drop it in a DLC pack for us to be able to pay for it to play with it now. That's not cool. And then number four, and this one will bug me the most, that is additional Team Builder slots. We should not have to pay to be able to download more teams. And to keep it all the way truthful, I feel like the limit should be higher to how many we can download. I believe they stated we can only download up to 20 Team Builder teams. That ain't enough. Fam, it's my hard drive. Let me download as many Team Builder teams as I want to. Call of Duty is like 300 gigabytes. if I have to delete every single game off of my PlayStation 5 just to download more team builder teams, I will do it. And number 5, this is something that would irritate me and I would absolutely refuse to pay for it. And that would be the real college football awards. I'm not even gonna try to butcher this, but whoever the association is that handles the college football awards, like let's say like the Doak Walker, the Biletnikoff, things like that, they decided not to be a part of the game, obviously to stand behind the NCAA in them not being in the game. But the problem is we don't really care, and they at some point are gonna want that representation within the game, and I hope they just do this in a future game versus trying to throw this out there as some sort of DLC pack. I won't buy it because, for one, you should have signed it, you should have done it in the first place, and there's absolutely no reason that I'm going to pay for something that should have been in the game in the first place or could have waited a year. And lastly, at number 12, we have Stadium Builder. Now, I wanted to include this anyway, but we may have gotten some form of confirmation that we may be getting something like this in Team Builder. We just don't have any of the details yet. But it is absolutely something that I could see them trying to sell us, is some sort of stadium creation toolkit. Like I said, it looks like we might have it, but I'd already wrote the list. I'm gonna go ahead and mention it while I got it here. But no, this isn't something that we should have to pay for. That should have been a part of Team Builder, or even in the base game through Dynasty mode, for us to be able to upgrade our stadium in a lower level school to be able to move them up into more prestigious conferences. And that's gonna do it for me, guys. I would really like to know what your guys' thoughts are on potential DLC for this game, and what do you think would be appropriate DLC content, and what do you think should be included in some sort of free update in the future. So if you could, please leave those thoughts down in the comment section below. And while you're down there, please go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the page, and turn on post notifications so you don't have to miss out on content. And again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Stay blessed. Peace.